When I started getting sleep was honestly where I started feeling like I could rebuild an identity that I could accept. That was really important for me.
Hello and welcome to the And Both podcast. Here we are going to hear from moms and those in motherhood that are doing the thing that works for them. They are honoring themselves alongside the all-encompassing role and level of expectation that is motherhood. And we are going to hear from as many different people as possible in their own experience. So you can find people to relate to. You can hear stories that will make you laugh, make you cry, all of the above, and that we will come together as a community to support one another in a way that is holistic and honoring of the woman and the mother as a whole. Okay, hello and welcome back to the And Both podcast. I am here today with Mica Deshaw of Rested Mama Happy Baby, and I have been looking forward to this for a while because as a mom and as a mom of lots of different people who have had lots of different sleep patterns, I think that your work is so necessary for everyone. And so I'm really excited for people to hear about you and about what you do and how that all weaves together to make this and both piece really an and both piece. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to always talk about this, mostly about the story, because I feel like there's so much white noise out there about motherhood, about sleep, about motherhood and sleep, and I'm really happy to be here and share the story.
That's awesome. Yeah. So how about let's start with you telling everyone a little bit about you.
I actually never thought in my mind I would end up, one, working in sleep and working so closely to babies. So my background and upbringing, I'm the oldest of cousins, of siblings. So I always kind of had that ability to, understand nurture, being the head. I did do a lot of work as a nanny, but I think all that work when I was younger solidified, I thought, for me, that I would not be doing much of that when I was older. It was going to prepare me for motherhood, to be honest. I was like, oh,
Yep.
I understand. I got this. I waited a really long time to have kids, in my opinion, finding the right stable marriage. I just knew, being the oldest, that motherhood was going to be hard. Focused on my career. I did the whole grad school thing. I actually studied edge technologies. I thought I was going to go into law. Did the whole climb up the ladder in corporate, in med device and IT, and thought like, okay, now I'm ready. Now I'm ready to have a kid. I met my husband in grad school, and we just thought we were being so smart about it, laying the foundation. Got married, waited a couple of years to have our first. I was in my 30s and had read every book because I really thought that you could prepare. And then I was not prepared.
Yeah.
So most people my family who knows me knows I usually try to learn everything I can before I dive into that. That's just the kind of person I am. I had like library of books. I read every single method. I think there was a book I read. It was like surviving and raising your child through 5 years old. And I had read the whole book like before I delivered. All that to say that the delivery, of course, didn't go as normal. And, breastfeeding didn't go as normal, whatever normal everyone told me it was going to be. And then I realized very quickly that I don't operate under 8 hours of sleep. Like, I just don't operate. I was leaving the house with my clothes inside out. I had to go back to work at 6 weeks, being where I was at the time. And we were not functioning. And I think that was, for me, a pivotal point to where, honestly, the sleep deprivation and going back to work, and then my husband also being a zombie, that I all of a sudden was like, oh my gosh, who am I? because everything came crashing down of what I thought I was capable of. And all the prep I did, that was just out the window.
Yeah, it's real. And I think that that's something that, like, again, why I'm so excited that you're here, because I think that's the thing. Like, you can read all the books, but like the lived experience of, like, I've put cereal boxes in the fridge before, and like, it's that kind of thing where you're just like, on a base, like, I can't human right now because I don't have enough. There's nothing left right now. And I'm just like roaming the house. I can't remember what I need to be doing. I can't complete a task, like all of that stuff. And that's not something that, like, no one like sits you down at your baby shower, right? And is like, hey, by the way, you're going to be pretty non-functional, because
Yeah,
like at that point you're pregnant, you're preparing, but you're still sleeping, even if you're not sleeping because you're very pregnant. Like,
right.
it's like, you like, I explained this once as, when you're in college and you stay up all night to like write a paper or prepare for a test or like whatever, right? Like, how awful you feel, and you go in and you hand the paper in, or you write the exam or whatever, and then you go back to your apartment or your dorm room and you sleep for
Sleep.
like 12
We get to
hours.
make it up.
But right, but like, what happens if you do that, but then you never get that? And that's what it's like to have an infant.
Yeah. It's so
It's like,
true. And I think the one thing that that often comes to my mind now that I'm on the other side, of course, because when you're in it, and I maybe had a couple friends who were also in the midst of it, but they actually didn't really talk about it. It made me feel like I was way more
mhm,
sleep obsessed. And then you hear it from your parents and from your aunts, and oh, well, yeah, babies just don't sleep. Like, you are somehow
mhm.
supposed to live with it. And then your mind goes into, am I the only one that seriously cannot function, that it bothers me so much? So then I went to, oh man, I wasn't meant to be a mom. I can't have another one. Well, how did everybody else kind of survive? And then you hear these other things like, well, sleep deprivation is a form of torture used.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what is it? Is it normal? And that is just something that we agreed to in motherhood, and we should be okay with it. And if we're not okay with it, we shouldn't be a mother. Or, I mean, all of these
Yeah.
things in my mind kept creeping up, and that just fed into postpartum anxiety and depression, and then I just didn't know where I was in life anymore, all because of sleep, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing too, is like, you're like, even when you say like, I just need sleep, it's like, just need sleep is a basic need. So it's not, I just need sleep, like I just need like a sandwich. It's like, my basic needs are not being met. So therefore, you're way behind the eight ball on this one. And you also are not able to process the situation the way that you would normally be able to process this situation, which, like you're saying, like, it feeds into all of these other areas, where normally, like, if you had all of this sleep and you had everything going, you'd be able to be like, no, this doesn't sound right. Like, I am doing a good job. I am meant to be doing what I'm doing right now. It's just a really hard part. But if we don't talk about it, that's what it feels like. It's all these like silos, right? Like, you see like the Instagram picture of the kid who's wrapped in the swaddle who's sleeping, and you're like, what is that? What is that like? Yeah. Oh my gosh. So how did that for you evolve into what you do now?
Yeah, so spoiler alert, I have 2 kids. So
You
I
did
did it.
it.
My first is actually now 7, and so
Mhm.
I do vividly remember there were a few breakdowns that made me feel like irrational, like I was irrational about very small things. So I think it was a snowball. I remember because of all the books, and all the books
Mhm.
contradict each other, and then all the bad advice that
Yes.
I get, honestly, on Facebook mom groups, because everything is
Yes.
individual to their experience, and then I try to make it to mine. I remember for a week my daughter at the time was taking 20-minute naps. And in my head, 20-minute naps or 30-minute naps meant that I was never going to sleep at night. So it gave me anxiety during the day when I failed at a nap. And I remember bouncing in a yoga ball with her in a swaddle and then bouncing for maybe 20 minutes and getting so frustrated that I had to lay her down, go to her bathroom, and I just cried on the floor. And I remember in the moment feeling like I was ridiculous because I was crying over a nap, but then also feeling super hopeless. And then later that night, we had gone to bed and it was my husband's shift. So we did this thing where we took turns that every other day I took anything that happened after like 2 a.m. and every other day he did. So it was his turn at 2 a.m. and 2 a.m. comes around and she's awake and she's crying. We had already been given the go to not feed her, that she didn't need it. And then my husband goes on the yoga ball and starts bouncing. An hour later, he's still bouncing.
Oh my God. And not sick.
Yes. And I remember he yells, just put her on the boob. It'll be faster. And me going, no, it's my turn. It's my turn. And like refusing because like I just wanted that like one night of sleep. And then his last thing that he said was, this is it. We need to do something about this. And so we had, after that, gone to a professional, and we actually used a sleep coach at that time. And with a matter of a week, honestly, since then, she's been a great sleeper. High needs, 7 years old. She gets 11 hours. She puts herself to bed. She knows her limits for her body. More sleep than I ever got as, a little kid. But I remember until up to that point, in addition to feeling that mom guilt and hopelessness, I also somehow felt like I was the only one responsible and should know how my child should sleep. Like it never occurred to me. It felt like a failure if I had to get help. Because everyone says,
yeah, welcome to like maternal medicine.
oh my gosh, it's so true. It's like, oh my gosh, like, and fast forward, getting better sleep, we decided to have another. And and I felt traumatized from the months of not sleeping and not functioning at work and feeling like I was less of a person, that I was determined not to do that, but I wanted to know why. So my husband was like, don't even read the books, just go get educated and certified. So I went through a year of certification and training. I actually, because I'm type A, got triple certified because one program was not enough. You always feel like, okay, I'm going to learn something different here. So I went across all of them. By that time, I was kind of working with babies. I worked in respiratory device for NICU, and anyways, long story short, went and pulled everything and all the evidence that I had together and realized like, oh my gosh, we can simplify this. And decided I was going to help 1 or 2 families a month. That's it. I'm going to take care of my baby. That was just for fun. I'm going to help a couple families. And then a couple families ended up being 100 families a month. And
oh my God,
it quickly scaled. And so we created a trademarked approach really based on anti-Googling. Our goal is to help the mom really not feel like she's failing because she's reaching out to help, just someone who can say, no, all of that is white noise. These are the 4 things you have to worry about. No, you don't have to do Ferbert. No, you don't have to leave your child in the room alone no, it doesn't have to take hours. Like if you do these 4 things, it could be 30 minutes on the first night and your child could be sleeping through the night by night 2. I mean, it doesn't have to be crazy like that. And so here we are. At Rested Mama Happy Baby, there's 2 of us. So I'm in California. My business partner is Chelsae. She's in Kansas City, and we do things a little different. So we have just found a way to help families. And then also in a different approach. We really like the idea of community and having a tribe. So a lot of sleep coaching programs out there really either will offer you a course or they'll offer you $1,000 one-on-one. We offer group
Yes.
coaching because we do it as a community, which allows it to be a little bit more accessible to a lot of families.
Okay, there's two things that I really love about that whole situation. Number one, that you didn't just go through one course and become like a disciple of that teaching. Like to me, the process of being like, okay, I'm not just going to do one, I'm going to see what the common pieces are and where things could be better and where things could be different. Like this is how you actually make change. This is how you actually create something new. It's not like I'm going to go out and get certified in this one of many and then be the next version of whoever I took this course from. But like to go through the process of figuring out where pieces are working for everyone really creates a distilled piece of education that frankly that's what families deserve versus like you're saying like set up this like super exclusive for the lack of better term like this super thing where you have to like you've got to have somebody in your home doing all of this stuff or you've got to pay all this money or you've got to like you've it's invasive. That's the word. You don't have this super invasive piece but and also so I think that that's incredible just all on its own but I also think that the part where you're doing it in a group, like that is huge value in the fact that, a lot of people, if you're hanging out with somebody one on one where you're like, I feel really vulnerable about this piece because I have so much of an identity that's tied to the fact that like I need to be able to make sure that my baby falls asleep, and like I may not I may not be as comfortable or as open or whatever with like the true what I need. But if you're sitting in a room with three other people and one is going like, my kid is up every hour. My kid will not fall asleep unless this. My kid, yada yada. Like you are creating the community piece that is really so lacking in what leads to Google and what leads to Facebook and what leads to like all of these other things because really what you're looking for is other people to have that shared experience. I think that's amazing. I think that is like, oh my
It
gosh,
fills my heart,
that is cool.
honestly, because we do a rolling enrollment. So you have people at different stages of our 30-day program in there, and you'll see a new mom come in and say, I'm just here to say hello. I don't even know where to start. My child wakes up
I don't know
every
my name.
45 minutes. I'm co-sleeping. I don't even know how this is going to work or how I'm going to go through this. What's the first thing I'm supposed to do? And she's really essentially talking to the coaches, but then you see these other moms go, oh my gosh, we were there just a week ago. You've got this. My child is this. And every time I see
Hmm.
that, I'm like, oh, because just that one comment, you're like, oh, I'm not alone. And
Yeah.
okay, this is fixable. And it just gives that glimmer of hope. I think the hardest thing when you mentioned before, when you study for a test and you go home and you can go make it up versus, having a child that wakes up, you also don't know the end. Like people always say, oh,
Right.
maybe they'll eventually fall asleep on their own. I mean, studies actually tell us that if you are experiencing sleep obstacles by the age of 8 to 12 months, you are going to continue to do so till about 3 years. So then you take the other studies that happen after 3 years, and 80% of preschoolers are sleep deprived. So for me, those are all continued, habits or things that we have an opportunity to change. So yeah, we're super passionate about what we do. We both have experienced postpartum anxiety or depression just because of sleep deprivation. And yeah, we're just happy to find something different. And really our stance is everything says if you want to get good sleep, you sleep train. And And that's true, but sleep training is not the only ingredient for something that's so biological.
Right.
Independent sleep is important, but where a lot of, I think, hesitancy that families run into is one, first, when someone says, oh, just sleep train, it sounds simple. And then you hear all these things on the Facebook groups. You just leave your child in their room and then, let them in there and cry it out for a little bit. You come out every 15 minutes. And some families have success over that, and a lot don't, because that's not the only ingredient. That's not the only method that you can use. Some babies require a little bit more guidance. Some, require a different approach. But it gives you that stigma that, like, oh, this should be easy. So if I can't do the one thing that's easy, then my child probably can't be helped. And then the
Right.
other stigma to it is, well, sleep training is cry it out. So that means my child has to cry themselves to sleep for 2 hours, and that's the only way. Well, I'm not willing to do that. But then not realizing, like, oh, there's so many other ways. There's so many other
Right.
ways. And it's not well known out there. Like, the thoughts are very black and white when it's related to baby sleep.
Mm-hmm. Good, because I think it's what happens so often is that if you don't have these communities of people who are going through things at the same time, you fall back on older generations, right? And like how the advice and the research and the education piece is not a benefit to older generations. So you get, I think a lot of times what you get is that, like, well, here's what worked for me. And you're like, I guess that's what we do. And even if it doesn't feel like that's the solution, even if it isn't the solution, all of those pieces, like, you're like, I guess, because like I slept before I had kids, and like this is what my parents did. So I guess this is what I do. And that, again, that's another layer of the like isolation onion, right? Is like all of these people did it, so I guess it's fine. But is that really ideal? So yeah, like I I say this now because she's 10 years old, but my oldest was a trick baby. And it, like, when she was little, I met a group of people. We all had kids around the same age and stuff like that. And I remember going out to lunch, and we were talking about sleep, and people were talking about sleep, and it was, it's a topic that comes up because we're all tired and we're all trying to figure it out and all of that. And I remember like sitting there going, I can't say anything because my daughter slept through the night at 9 weeks. So I was like, and I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
This was not anything that like I'm not a master, like I don't whatever. She just did. And the problem is that it wasn't like I had no airs of like, well, I've got this, like, oh, yada yada. But I was like, at some point the needle's gonna, like, the other shoe's gonna
Yeah.
drop. Like something's gonna happen. And it was just this like house of cards, like someday she won't sleep, whatever. No, it didn't
Yeah.
happen. She just, like, always. Then I had another baby who was up all the time. But like at that point in time, my husband and I were like, well, like our oldest just slept. So like, why doesn't he just sleep? So it's like, it's coming somewhere, right? Like I didn't have like all these people and all these people just slept. And I'm like, oh, wow, let's talk about sleep because I don't have any experience. Like all of my kids are completely different. But by the time I got to the fourth kid, like, my husband would still say like, but isn't this? And I was like, they're all different. Like, we just ride the wave here. This is what we do. Get your surfboard and just ride the wave.
It's so true. And so studies actually say that there is a percentage of babies. So I always get the question when I talk to families, well, I don't know if I should do this right now, because what if my child just naturally starts sleeping through the night? And I always tell families that you'll know, because there is actually a percentage of babies that are just predisposed to sleeping through the night. Actually, like, they have, it's like having that natural skill that you can throw at the age of 2. That doesn't mean you'll never throw. That means maybe those kids need help later or a coach. But some are predisposed to that, and that's why, another sibling might be different. And I love that you said that things are different. And The second child, you had to do different things, because I do think that there is some thought out there, like we get families and it's their third, but the first two naturally slept through the night. And so in their minds, it's like this happens naturally all the time, right? And unfortunately, it doesn't happen all the time, but you will know with your child. Like, you will know. If you're holding on to that little bit of hope, okay, great, do it. Because if you can hold on, that means your sleep is sustainable. Don't change anything. Nobody's telling you that you need to do those things. It's at the point where you're like, I'm about to crack. Then maybe it's time for a bigger change, and you move forward to something different. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
really interesting.
I think too, like that's again another piece where we need to have more of these like group conversations and more community that's not like, the Facebook mom who's like, "No, I know how to fix everything." And you're like, "What are your
Yeah.
qualifications, lady? Like what are we doing here?" So in terms of like the age of babies that you work with, like is there specific pockets of like age, or does it go all the way up to a certain age, or what does the spectrum look like for you
Yeah.
guys?
So, how we approach our babies is based on where they are developmentally. So, there are what we say four main factors of sleep. The first factor is going to be environment, low hanging fruit, but we are also safe sleep ambassadors. So, we were certified to identify one of the 24,000 products that are sold for sleep that are actually not safe for sleep, which is crazy. So
Oh my
we're
gosh.
able to identify that, because if your child is going to sleep longer, we want to make sure that space obviously is safe. The second is what we call our magic routine, and this is actually the bigger element of good sleep, is finding a schedule that aligns to your child's natural sleep rhythm that will allow them to sleep easier and sleep longer. So it's like, that extra catalyst in your cake, or your active ingredient. And that's actually the biggest piece that most programs don't do, because they usually just give you a template or say, hey, okay, 7 o'clock,
Mm,
and do the schedule. We don't do that. Every child is super different, and it's actually usually that one piece that can be the difference of a 30-minute nap, a 1 hour nap, or a wake up 2 hours later or 5 hours later. And then we go
yes.
into a responsive method where you're in the room. It varies based on a child's temperament and age. And then we go into what we call calibration or sleep log analysis, where then we take all the pieces and we actually calibrate based on what your child's sleep is naturally doing, and finding them a new schedule that supports those 11 hours or whatever it is. So, with that, every step is really customized. So, we can work with newborns where we're not really sleep training, we're just setting the foundation from the beginning. We recommend starting around 8 weeks of age, because that is the developmentally appropriate time where they're able to identify sequences and routines. So please, before that, just enjoy, and no need to worry about anything.
Hold
Hold
on.
on. After that, it's more appropriate. And then we also then go into our infants. Our infants start around 11, 12 months for us, depending on where they are developmentally. They have a different approach where we modify all the way to 18 months. And then we go from 19 months to 4 years of age, where we do work with preschoolers and toddlers, and that is also a whole different approach. That specific
Yeah.
age has a fourth or a fifth pillar, where it's really more behavioralist, because at that point, like, they can make a definitive decision to not want to do what you ask. And so there is a component in there where you have to help them want to go to sleep, and not
Mhm.
just do it based on being told. So we all that to say, we work with ages up to 4 years of age. Chelsae is actually a toddler behavioral specialist, so she studied that. That's where our special sauce also comes from, the toddler side. So we're able to work with all ages pretty much, except for adults.
That's awesome. I love that it's that idea too that you're not like it's not too late, right? Like it's not like, oh, well, my kid is now 3 and I guess the ship has sailed. Like I guess this is the way that it's going to be. So it's that idea that like there is a long runway to really help identify what is healthy or helpful. That's not the healthful for your for like developing those routines and helping your kids figure out how to sleep
Yeah.
so that you can sleep.
So you can function and
Yeah.
figure out honestly who you're going to be after motherhood, because you're never going to be the same, and it's okay, but it's hard to feel okay when you're tired.
And not
And
Googling.
not Googling. I Googled
Mhm.
everything, everything,
Mhm.
and every Facebook mom group. And I was just so confused. So we actually do have a free training that we provide families just to get them through that first step and debunk all the things. We're very evidence-based. As you can probably tell, I'm type A and I have to read everything. So we went through the top things that you just don't need to worry about anymore and explained what those pillars are for
Yeah.
infants. That free training is on our website on restedmamahappybaby.com for anyone that wants to just watch it. But that's what we're striving for. We want to normalize moms needing sleep and that being okay, and having that not dictate the type of mom you are. But we also want to
Yes.
normalize that for some families, waking up every 2 hours is okay for them, and their sleep situation, that's what they want. We're also advocates of, great, if it's not broken for you, don't fix it. The
Mhm.
sleep industry, I think, has a bad name that, we're honestly, sometimes I see it taking advantage of tired parents. It's like, no, we just want to be the hope. If you need us, we're here. If you don't, great. We're here for your tips, whatever you need. And just making sure
Right.
that message
It's
is out.
Yeah, I think too, like the idea of that, like so often what gets marketed, I think a lot of what gets marketed or how they do marketing is like, here is what's wrong. Let me tell you what your problem is, because I am the only person who can sell you the solution. And I think that, that is the double-edged sword of like, here's what's wrong and it's your fault. So now you need to do this, buy this, create this, yada yada, in order to be doing it right. Because if you don't, not only are you bad, but you're going to screw it all up. And that's the greatest fear, right? Is like, you got to leave the hospital with a baby and you're like, whose idea is it that I can like actually do this? Like is there nobody signing off on this? Is there nobody that's coming with me? Because like, why am I okay to be doing this right now? So I think too, like that idea of like having a start of let's get on the same level of like, here's probably what you're reading when you are looking for answers in places that don't focus on the evidence and they don't focus on things that we focus on, and here's why we focus on those things. So after you got sleep and and starting all of this and all of that stuff. So what did that change for you? Because I think too, like the idea is like focusing on getting to back to sleep and feeling like yourself and all of that stuff, that becomes the goal. But then once you get there, what happens after that? So what happened for
Yeah. So
you?
I will preface, for new moms, or moms maybe in the same stage as me, maybe felt this. I will never be the person I was before children. My body is different, my mind is different, my hormones are different, my capabilities are different, the way I think is different, my values are different. And when you go into post motherhood tired, that dissonance between you being different and what you grew into 30 years prior feels like a bad part of your life. For me, it did.
Mm,
And the hormones and all that stuff. When I started getting sleep was honestly where I started feeling like I could rebuild an identity that I could accept. That was really important for me. Until then, I think I
Yes.
was running on fumes, and I kept mourning the loss of who I was before. And I was 15 pounds heavier, but I didn't have the energy to do things. And I was going through work just frustrated because it also gave me guilt that I wasn't spending time with my daughter at the time. But once I got sleep, I had clarity. I think honestly it gave me just a better chance to even focus on myself, even though it was an hour that I didn't feel like I couldn't move from the couch. I lost
Yeah.
15 pounds. I found a hobby. I was nicer to my husband. Honestly, my daughter was so much happier. I don't know if it was because I was more rested or she was more rested or it was both, but parenting felt like it was attainable for me. And as the spoiler alert shows, is I felt like I could be a mom again. Like I could do this with two.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty big for me. I think why I'm so passionate about sleep, but it changed quite a bit. And in motherhood and feeling more capable, that was the catalyst for me to realize my 30 something year, identity in corporate didn't need to be. And, I can go into small business and I can have the courage to do that and be a mom.
Mm-hmm.
I know that might be like a long stretch to think like just getting sleep, but I really feel like everything was a domino effect. And if I didn't solve that problem for me, I would be in a different space right now.
Yeah. For sure. For sure. Your experience of that, like trying to bounce back. I think that too, like I don't know if that's something that came up for you. It's that idea of like I go and do this thing and then I come back,
Hmm.
right? But like the person that goes into the hospital or the person that goes into the birth center or the person that goes into like, the water tub or whatever it is, the person that comes out of that is not the same.
No, not at all.
But you don't, it's another thing, like you don't know what you don't know. And maybe that's great because the identity shift and the shift in values and the shift in priorities and all of that stuff, that comes like a raging waterfall where you're like, okay, so like we're not going to do it the same anymore. And like I feel like that, I mean, I can only speak for myself, but like I feel like that was a very black and white thing for me. Like there's so much gray that comes in motherhood, but I was like, listen, we're not going to do that anymore. Like thank you, no, like I comfortably close the door, like nope, I'm not, I'm all done here. This I'm going to take on, this I'm not going to take on. Like it becomes very very cutthroat in terms of like where your time is. But that also requires that you have a clear not conscience, that you have a clear head, and that comes from sleep. Yeah. Sleep. We all need more sleep. We all need good sleep, not just like I've, like slept on the couch for 20 minutes. It's like we need good sleep and we need good sleep when our babies have good sleep. But good sleep, what you're doing is not good sleep, is not my definition of good sleep or your definition of good sleep. Good sleep is good sleep for that baby.
Yes.
And it's really it's a really baby-centered approach to what you're doing and helping people understand that like the idea of should really has no place in sleep.
Exactly. I mean, every family is different. Every child is different. Their family dynamics is different. We have nurses and people in the medical field and firefighters, and they have weird schedules, or kids in daycare and families who work and families who don't have that same schedule. And I think if we start becoming too black and white with sleep, it's going to be unattainable. And
Yeah.
and we hear that all the time. It's unfortunate, and again, because we studied across so many different methods and institutions, I can't tell you how many times we've had a family who has felt hopeless because they have done a program, but their coach had said, well, the reason that you're not getting sleep is because you just won't put your child in their own room at 6 months or 7 months. And so they come to me and they're like, yeah, I mean, I guess we're just not going to, we're willing to. And I'm like, wait, you don't have to put your child in that separate room to get them to sleep. The whole point of independent sleep is it is regardless of external factors. So that means there's something else in those four ingredients that is off. And so let's focus on those things. But when I hear those things, it breaks my heart. So as many people as I can tell, there's a way for everyone to get sleep. There is a way.
But it's not the
It's
same
not the
way.
same way.
Like that's right. That's what you're doing by having a group approach versus a, click buy now, and then you get this whole program downloaded and you get a paper template. A paper template has no ability to reason. It has no ability to like understand the context. I think that's incredible. I just think like there's so many amazing, like you took something that you totally could have just stared down the funnel of and been like, here's my life now. Like, this is terrible. I fixed my own problem. But like, again, to turn around and be like, I don't want other people to feel the way that I do. And like finding that there is information out there that's not helpful or no longer has been proven through research or studies or whatever that it's not helpful to like go through the painstaking process of creating something so that the next person that comes along doesn't have to literally reinvent the sleep wheel for you. I think that's remarkable.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, you must know too, as someone who's well educated, unless you know how to read through research and evidence, if you are just going in and Googling things without having that background of understanding how to read things, it could feel like there's a lot of evidence to not do things on either side of the spectrum, right? There's evidence can be misconstrued in so many different ways, and then it could be so confusing. And I mean, it's unfortunate because if you get to the core of it, there's four things you have to worry about, and it's not black and white. And no, your baby is going to be fine. And also why we call it rested mama happy baby. Like at the end of the day, you mom have to function to enjoy the moment and to care for your child. So to think that you have to sacrifice and not sleep and that's better for your child is just not true, because they need you. And in the process, you both need sleep, not just one or the other.
Right. Right. It's not that idea of like pouring out from that empty cup and saying, no, like I will fall upon this myself so that you all may be fine. Because really what's happening is, if there's parents and a couple of kids, not everybody is getting their basic needs met, but we're still expecting everybody to function as though they're getting their basic needs met. So it's just that recalibration that needs to happen so that everybody does have a seat at the table. Yeah, I love that. So, will you tell everybody where they can find you, how they can work with you guys, if all of that, all of the things?
Yes. Well, we are here for families. You can follow us on Instagram, rested mama underscore, between rested mama underscore happy underscore baby. We give a lot of tips there. We love to just talk about motherhood, but you can also find us at restedmamahappybaby.com. Again, we do have a free training that we give everyone. You have access to it. We break down the common mistakes and misunderstandings related to baby sleep, and then we go into really our approach and our 4 steps. And you can reach out to us there. Chelsae and I are really close to our families, and we'll hopefully see you guys there. We're here if you need us.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming today, because I think that this is one of those things like you're taking it from a lens of helping your baby so that you can get the things that you need so that you're doing this, you are able to live this and both experience, which is why I'm here. It's that you can you can really put yourself into the equation again. So I think that what you guys are doing is wonderful. And any mom that has solved their own problem and then in turn creates a solution for other moms in a way that is ethical and, it's based on research and things that work and that keep babies safe. I mean, I could go into a whole other rabbit hole with you about safe sleep and products and all of that stuff, but I think that is an incredible piece to bring along with it. So thank you so much for coming on today. And if anyone has questions about sleep or anything like that, I definitely think that you guys are where it's at. So thank you so much for joining us.
And thank you for having this conversation and having this platform. It's so needed for families and moms, and it's incredible what you do too. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Well, go and check her out. RestedMom@happybaby.com. I will put everything in the show notes. And again, thank you for joining me.